You know what? I am tired of you pro-gun groups putting out crap to scare veterans from going and getting the services they need from the VA. All around this boogeyman thing about the VA is going to submit your name under bullshit conditions to the FBI's NICS instant background check system, and you won't be able to exercise your Second Amendment right. That's just bullshit, and I'm going to talk about that on this video. So we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about the NICS system, which is the instant background check system that you do when you go to buy a firearm, and it's federal. It has nothing to do with your state's concealed carry requirements. So we're talking about whether you can purchase, own, or carry within your state law a firearm, right? So what are the things that disqualify you? Well, in case it's been a while since you have purchased a firearm, and oh, by the way, the NICS requirements have not changed. They are. You have been convicted in any court of a crime punishable for more than 1 year. That's your sentence. So you don't want to get those year plus a day. And there are some states that have those kind of sentences for the purpose of preventing you from exercising your Second Amendment right. So if it's 1 year, 365 days or less as your sentence, you're good to go. If you are a fugitive from justice, you know what that means if that's you. If you are an unlawful user of or addicted to any controlled substance. And you know what a controlled substance is, right? Now, here's the one that gets everybody's undies in a bunch for veterans. And that's, have you been adjudicated? That means legally found to be a mental defective. A mental defective. Some citizen or some bureaucrat staff person cannot declare you that. You have to be adjudicated that by a court or some other authority. A bureaucrat is not an authority in the context, and I will get to that, because then I'm going to go to the VA's law so you understand that. Or you have been committed to a mental institution. And we'll talk about that. Okay? You are an illegal or unlawful alien. Period. You can't prove your citizenship or your right to be here, be a green card or something like that. You're done. You're done. So no, illegal aliens cannot legally buy firearms. Period. If they do, they are a felon. Yeah, this is right. If you've been discharged from the armed forces under dishonorable conditions, not other than honorable, dishonorable, because some of you guys have got other than honorable. And oh, by the way, working with your vet center, there are folks that can get that changed for you. So don't just roll over. Go check that out. Visit your vet center. Talk to your counselor. Having been a citizen of the United States, and as you were one, and you said, nah, I don't want to do that anymore, and you revoke your own citizenship, you're done. Kind of stupid to do that, but people do, mainly to avoid taxes, to live somewhere else. Well, you can't have a gun anyway, so sucks to be them. subject to a domestic violence protection order that meets certain requirements. Now, I'm not going to get into the domestic violence thing, right? Not in this, because this is about veterans and this whole mental disorder piece. You have been convicted in any court, of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. So one is an order of protection, right? And I know people play the game. I'm going to get one on you. I'm going to get one on you. You don't want to mess around with that. You don't want to mess around with that. Because it means if the order of protection is in force, you can't buy a gun while that thing is in force. The second part is if you have been convicted in a court of a misdemeanor, not a felony, a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, you are screwed. What is that? Keep your hands to yourself. Keep your hands to yourself. That's what that means. Don't be stupid. If you're under indictment, no, you can't. If you've been charged with a crime punishable by imprisonment for more than 1 year, so you're charged and the penalty is more than 1 year, that's a year plus a day, you're screwed, right? Your name goes in there and yes, there's a way to get it out, but we'll talk about that. So that's the rules for having your name pop up saying denied, not delayed, denied. You can be delayed and it's inconvenient. Denied is a whole nother thing. So those are the conditions for being denied. Now, let's talk about veterans, mental disorders, and the VA, and what that has to do with the FBI NICS system. See, there was a lot of information put out a while back to get veterans pissed off and to get other people who are sympathetic to veterans pissed off on their behalf. And these are those guys, and you know who you are. You know who you are. You put out bullshit crap about this mythical, non-existent thing, never existed, and you called it something. You called it something to get everybody's tits in an uproar. You called it the Veterans Disarmament Act. What are you smoking? Nobody in their right mind would create a bill and give it that title. And the title that it was given isn't even associated with that. But for you folks who want to go research it, the bill was this is in the U.S. Congress, H.R. 264. H.R. 264, and it was the NICS Improvement Act of 2007. This crazy stuff came out a year or two ago. Years after that was even put in place, right? I don't know. There was never such a thing as the Veterans Disarmament Act ever. There was H.R. 264, and it was called the NICS Improvement Amendment Act of 2007. And the NRA was very careful. They had the best smart bunnies they had sitting down there with the Congress people who were writing this thing and reviewing it to make absolutely certain that you as a veteran would not get screwed by some bureaucratic mistake that they make as a bill makes its way to become law. Okay? There is no pending law, none, to take firearms away from veterans. There is no pending legislation that would prevent a veteran with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, or any person, veteran or not, from purchasing firearm or ammo. But there was a huge campaign of misinformation and scare tactics by some gun owners groups, and I won't put the names out there. You know who you are. You know who you are. You stepped on your wang, pooped in your mess kit. You put out bad stuff to scare veterans, and that was bullshit. Okay? Let's talk about what that would really mean. Just what would that mean? If veterans lose the right to own firearms because of a diagnosis of PTSD, right? Just saying. How it would eliminate 80% of the law enforcement force in this country, let alone what it would do to our standing military. Nobody is going to do something that dumb. Nobody. Nobody has ever proposed anything that dumb. And if you see something, if you have proof, written proof, not hearsay, but written proof that that was in fact the case, you need send it to me. I'll make a video on it, right? Or give it to the press. They would love something like that. But none of that has happened. Now, we believe that the confusion of this deal with veterans and PTSD happened around 2000-ish, when the VA did submit about 85,000 names of veterans to the NICS database. And those are veterans who had been committed to VA psychiatric wards or had been adjudicated a mental defective. Now I'm going to go to what the law says that the VA can do and not do. And trust me, just because you have a diagnosis of PTSD, they cannot send your name to the NICS database for that, right? But if you are declared a mental defective, and that's very specific, or you are committed to a psychiatric ward, you're committed to that ward, then every government agency has to report that, wherever they are. VA just happens to be one of them. But it was not a conspiracy, right? But because of that, some people thought that a veteran with any mental health issue, and there's a bunch that are coded for the VA, that you would end up on that list. Anyone who just sat and thought for a minute would understand how stupid, absurd that would be. Now, there has never been, and is not now, any law, especially H.R. 264, that would put any person, including veterans, right, who have sought psychiatric treatment or voluntarily checked themselves into a psychiatric unit, to put their names on the NICS list. None. Zero. Zip. Not then, not now, not future. So if you're a veteran and somebody starts talking this crap to you, right, they're not your friend. They're not your friend. They have an ulterior motive, and it's all about them or their organization. Okay? And they're trying to scare you into doing something or feeling a particular way so you could give them money or raise a ruckus. After the Virginia Tech shooting, the guy, he was whacked, right? And everybody knows that now. And so there was consensus both from the government, including the NRA, which is strong supporters, saying we got to do something about making sure the right people are in the database, and the people that shouldn't be in the database are taken out, or names not put in there. That got solved in this legislation, the H.R. 264, which is why it was the NICS improvement law, right, to make it better. So here are the protections in the law that relate to the NICS database. So there are three things that protect the whose name gets put into the NICS database. But the preamble to that says no department or agency of the federal government may provide to the Attorney General, read that as the FBI, any record of adjudication or determination related to the mental health of a person or any commitment of a person to a mental institution if, right? In other words, these next three things, if either of those have happened, your name cannot be submitted to the NICS database. The first one, if the adjudication, determination, or commitment has been set aside or expunged, or you got better. Yeah? You got better. You've been released or discharged from all mandatory treatment, supervision, or monitoring. Your name cannot be submitted. 2. The person has been found by a court, a board, or commission, those are legal entities, not individual bureaucrats, or other lawful authority, to no longer suffer from the mental health condition that was the basis of the adjudication, determination, commitment, or has otherwise been found to be rehabilitated through any procedure available under law. Okay? It's been expunged or set aside, you got better. And the third one is, if it's based solely on a medical finding of disability without a finding that the person is a danger to himself or others, or that the person lacks the mental capacity to manage his own affairs. You have to be in pretty bad shape to get to that level. So you can have a finding of a mental disability. You can. That doesn't mean you are unqualified to purchase, own, carry a firearm. And therefore, your name doesn't go into the database unless you have been found to be a danger to yourself or others, and you lack the mental capacity to manage your own affairs. That doesn't mean you just want somebody to help you with your bookkeeping. But if your mental disability is such that you cannot manage your affairs and you must have someone to help you, you're on the list. But that makes sense, doesn't it? So the last part is, if somebody says you have it's been adjudicated, you have a mental disability that's at this level, there is a process now under law, and every department who has the authority to make such a determination must have a process so that the person can appeal it, get it undone. And it happens every day. Every department. That includes the VA. All right? So you're not stuck in that condition forever. Now let's talk about the law. The law as it relates to the Veterans Administration, and specifically the subject of mental disorders and what levels that could affect you as veterans, or actually any other person, but I'm talking about veterans now. It's the document is the Code of Federal Regulations, or the CFR, and it's huge, right? But this particular subset is Title 38, Chapter 1, Part 4, Subpart B as in Bravo. I'll put the link down there so you can go check it out yourself. But in Section 4.130, it's the schedule of ratings. That means how bad it is for mental disorders. Now, a disorder is just that. A layperson, we generally have no clue. We hear mental and then zone out. Anything mental, bad. Mental, bad, don't have gun. That's not the case. Not the case. So, in the codes for which disorders are considered. I'm not going to go through them because they're all scored the same. There are 40 disorders, 40 mental disorders that are evaluated by the Veterans Administration or your physician, whoever you go to see when you go there. The rating table has has 6 categories, and these are disability levels. You have the disorder, and then you have to what level of disability is that. So you can have PTSD with 0 disability rating. Then it goes to 10%, 30%, 50%, 70%, and 100%. Now remember, just because you have the disorder and just because you have a disability rating does not mean your name gets sent to the NICS database. What has to get sent is that you've been adjudicated, not scored, but adjudicated to be a danger to yourself or others, regardless of the mental disorder and regardless of the disability level. Although I have to say that disability level 100% for a mental disorder, let me read that to you. Total occupational and social impairment. That's you don't function socially and you can't keep a job. Due to such symptoms as gross impairment in thought processes or communication, persistent delusions or hallucinations, grossly inappropriate behavior, persistent danger of hurting yourself or others, intermittent inability to perform activities of daily living, okay, including maintenance of minimal personal hygiene, disorientation to time or place, memory loss for names of close relatives, your own occupation, or your own name. I don't think anyone would disagree that a person that presents with those kinds of symptoms then can be adjudicated a mental defective now. Just because you have a mental disorder doesn't mean you're mental defective. But in this case, it takes a lot to be, my point to you veterans, it takes a lot to be declared a mental defective. Having a mental disorder or being under treatment, right, is not grounds for having your name submitted to the NICS database. So no federal agency can do that. Right? So I say all that to say is, and I'm a combat veteran, and I say that to all of you other folks that have been in harm's way, whether you military or first responders. You have done your service or are doing your service, and you should not be afraid to get whatever help you think you need and then think somebody is going to put your name on a list so you can't do something or come and take your firearms. That is not going to happen. Now, if there's folks out there that think I'm blowing smoke, the challenge is prove me wrong. I read the law, and I'll be posting that for your review. If you have other information that is current and accurate, we'd love to see it, and I'll make sure that that's available. So in the meantime, I appreciate you watching this, and it was a bit of a rant, but boy, that stuff really pissed me off, and it should piss you off too. But thanks for watching, and carry on.